Hey y'all, I'm Shannon,
I'm Alexis.
and we are welcoming you back for another episode of Get Stiff.
Get Stiff is a podcast where we have conversations around grief, loss, and everything in between over cocktails. Each episode coincides with a themed cocktail, and we share the recipe with our listeners.
So today's cocktail is a gift that was brought to us by our lovely guests who we're excited to introduce. It's a cozy combination of hot tea and honey with just a splash of whiskey, kind of like a hot toddy. Will we love it? Will we hate it? We're probably not going to hate it, but we're going to find out together right now. So if you're ready, let's raise a mug.
Hey.
Take a sip.
Ooh, mine's really hot.
Ooh. Oh my gosh, it's like a hug. And
So
let's
perfect,
get
right?
into it. It's perfect. Let's get into it.
Yes. I'm so excited to introduce today's guest. So, Maryah Greene is a New York-based, Japan-bred plant doctor and consultant and founder of Greenpeace. What started as an Instagram account filled with plant tips and tricks has blossomed into a full-blown business. She solidified her position as New York's go-to plant stylist, following appearances and features in the New York Times, Vogue, Good Morning America, and more. Much like her plants, Maryah knows what it's like to start from seed and has no intention of stopping anytime soon. She's also the author of this amazing book, which we will talk about in a little bit, called Good Things, and I'm so excited. Thank you so much for joining us, Maryah.
Thank you for having me. I'm
Yes.
so excited. You putting up the book was everything too. Yes, I appreciate the support so much. Thank you guys.
So, I mean, we've seen your beautiful plants on social media, and I mean, before I even dive into the questions, I just am curious to know what it was like for you when you heard that. Hey, these two Death Carol girlies want to talk to me.
Well, okay, I'll go through my mindset one by one. I was like, okay, curly girls in the building, automatic yes, we can talk hair products if anything. Secondly, I was like, I've done so many podcasts and tons of media since the book has come out, and I feel like the questions tend to get repetitive. And so after I got a chance to look at all of your episodes, I thought, I feel like we can really dive into some fun stuff that's like not the run of the mill questionnaire I've been getting. So I was excited.
Yay! Well,
Yeah.
thank you. And I'm always curious to see anybody who is really excelling on their plant journey. And I don't know if it's the fact that it's like they know I'm a mortician and plants just hate me. Hate me. I have two. And people keep bringing them to me to try. I have two. I have a beautiful snake plant. Her name is Shirley, and she's been with me for 2 years, and she's been hanging on. And then I have Camille, my pothos, who's only I've had her about 4 months, and she's hanging in there. But everything else, it just doesn't. So where did you discover this love of plants? How did you get to this place where now you are this plant doctor and you are just that girl when it comes to the green living beautiful things, even this beautiful plant behind you?
Thank you. Yeah, this is
Seriously.
my baby back here. This is my proof that this is my little validation baby where I'm like, I'm worth the money, I promise. But no, you just spoke to the exact reason why I saw sort of a lane in this industry or lack thereof. And it was mainly because I found that people had this idea in their mind of like, I'm good at plants or I'm not. I kill every plant or I have 50 million of them. And there didn't really seem to be this like point in the middle where you could just casually have a couple of plants and keep them alive. But Shannon, you just spoke to the exact concept, and it's this idea that it's about having the right plants that work for you, your life, and your space. And that is all the commitment that you could ever need. And so there is no more scale of, oh, I'm really good at this or really bad at it. I have the ones that work for me, and that's why it comes so easily to me. And that practice I picked up in the classroom. I'm a former elementary school educator, and one of the main things that any good teacher will tell you is that, of course, we're presented at the beginning of the year with all of the things we need the kids to learn by the end of the quarter, by the end of the month, by the end of the year, etc. And your number one job as a teacher with 32 kids is understanding that every kid comes in with a different level of understanding and learning experience. Your job is to meet them where they are so that they can all end up at that finish line. And that's exactly what I try to do with my plant parents and plant clients. It's understanding your space, who you are, what your history in caring for plants is. That way we can make sure that your pothos and your snake plant are living happily, and then we're good.
I love that so
You
much.
spoke to my spirit. My
See, we're
mom
on
is
the opposite end
a
of the
former
spectrum.
elementary school teacher. Both of our mothers are educators, actually. And so you just,
Really?
yes.
Yep.
Yeah, you know
So
the mentality.
Yep.
It's like there's
Yeah.
so much to do as a teacher, and you can find endless things to fill your time with when it comes to education. But the main thing is you want to make sure that every kid has an equal and equitable opportunity to learn what they can in
Absolutely.
those 9 months.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And
Absolutely.
my mom's actually a special education teacher. So all of that, I grew up around all of that. But it's funny how you talk about people are usually on like two sides of the spectrum, because I think Shannon is the one who's always like, I kill everything. And I'm like that. I have 50 million plants. Like every time I can't stay out of Trader Joe's. Every time I come out of Trader Joe's, I have a new plant, or wherever I am. So I can't even, I don't even know how to name, but it was just crazy when I found your book. I was actually looking for a blog that we were writing for another one of our ventures, and I was looking specifically for a children's book for children of color that, you know, address death and address grief. And it's so limited. And I was so excited when I found your book, because it literally changed everything. And I just remember telling Shannon, like, oh my God, Shannon, like if we could get her on our podcast to talk about it, because it's so important. And especially being women of color, and like, I just think about my like siblings and my family and my niece and my nephew, especially like his little black boy, and just having this conversation with him one day. So I want to know what inspired you to write this freaking phenomenal book that I'm in love with.
Oh, thank
We're
you. That means
obsessed.
so much to me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're obsessed.
It was exactly that, Alexis. Like when I was teaching, before I like formally started teaching education, got my master's, I was working at summer camps in nonprofits in Southeast DC. And I worked with children that were in what was considered to be at-risk, underserved neighborhoods. And I found that these kids not only had double the amount of responsibility, and that looks like not only just going to school, but like caring for their siblings, caring for sometimes even their caregivers. They just had the weight of the world on them. And I found that they had the same level of expectations as other kids and not the same amount of responsibility. And one thing that I found to be consistent was the fact that some of them were experiencing mourning and loss. And that is something that we don't even experience. Some people have the luxury of not experiencing until they're better emotionally equipped, i.e., like maybe even an adult. And so I found it so alarming that we had these expectations of these kids, but we didn't even have the mental health and resources to be able to give them the space to talk about their feelings. And so just like you, I was like, I want to have these conversations about grief. I don't want to shy away from them. I want them to know that what they're feeling is normal. Crying isn't bad. Feeling angry isn't bad. These are all feelings that need to be felt. And so not only did I find a lack of books that talked about loss, mourning, and death, but I also, just like you said, I couldn't find any that related to children of color. I couldn't find any that looked like the worlds that my kids lived in at the time. And so I wanted to create a story that not only spoke to that, but challenged our way of speaking about loss with children, because I think it's hard enough for us as adults to talk about loss. We get a bit icky if someone passes away and it's like, oh, I'm so sorry. And we have this like awkward moment amongst us. But I think if it's our responsibility to prevent that from happening, and the best way we can do that is to promote talking about it with children so that the next generation can feel like it's a more fluid conversation because they don't shy away from those feelings.
Absolutely. And we're big on that here. We're very big on, if you don't see the space, create the space. And that really is, I know we've said this, Alexis, a million times, but that was kind of even the goal of starting this show. Because, I mean, you know, combined, we have over 2 decades in death care. And a lot of people, when they think of a funeral director, you think of this like old white man in his 50s and 60s and, you know, looking like Lurch. And it's just like, that's not, that's not who we are. That's not what we do. And trying to find ways to make this information accessible and these conversations, because speaking specifically to the Black community, it's very much if you talk about it, you're inviting it in. And there is this apprehension of even broaching this topic, which leads to an inability to deal with it when it happens, because it's going to happen. It's absolutely inevitable.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, Maryah, you know, a lot of folks may have that luxury of not experiencing it until they're older. But then for these kids, we have to be able to support them and let them know that what they're feeling is okay and it's normal, and kind of help shepherd them through that. And one thing I absolutely loved is that I want to talk a little bit about Big Mon and the leaves dropping and the brown spots, and that hit me right in my little fifis, because I immediately saw that as a euphemism for grief, and how you try to either busy yourself or you try to do all of these things to make yourself feel better, and other people try to do that for you, when really the only way to go through grief is to go through grief. And sometimes you just need time. So no matter what, you know, others try to do to make us feel better, I see Malcolm just doing everything he could think of to save this plant, and it just was not going well. And you could just see his confidence shrinking. And it made me think of what we do for ourselves when things get hard. And, you know, we try to put Band-Aids on the problem instead of facing it head on or giving it the time and space it needs. So I'd like to know, what do you do to care for yourself when your leaves start to brown, or when, you know, your leaves start to drop, when you are really in that space of, this is really fucking hard right now. Sorry, we curse on this show. It's really fucking hard right now.
Yes, here for it.
How do you care for yourself? How do you care for your leaves?
I will say, I want to answer that question in two parts. The way that I used to, I mean, obviously the reason I was able to write this book is because it came from home, right? Not only was I picking it up from the children that I worked with, but it was very much a euphemism for how I experienced grief. And I overcompensate in my work. I busy myself until I can't feel anything, until my only focus is to check off this to-do list. And so while I think it's a beautiful thing that my business has grown and my brand has grown to this extent, I don't think that it would have happened this quickly had it not been for grief. But what that's taught me is that at some point you are going to have to go through it. You can skirt around it all you want. Eventually you're going to have to go back through that revolving door. And so presently, this book was very cathartic for me because I was able to get all of those feelings out on paper in a very metaphorical way. And I've always believed that the one way that you can tell if you truly understand something is if you can explain it back to someone else. You know that you've mastered something if you can explain it back to a child. And so I had to not only go through the process of breaking down this sort of story and experience about grief, but then I had to put it in like kid language, and kids will tell you if something makes sense or if it doesn't make sense. And so I went through the trials and the like test groups of, does this part make sense and whatever. And once I got it, I felt very, not only validated, but I felt like I had created a piece of work that was not just for me anymore. It was to speak on behalf of the children that didn't have the space to speak about it. So all of that to say, presently, the way that I care for my leaves is it's checking in. It's not automatically running to pick up the watering can as soon as I see a leaf fall off. I don't need to do anything or physically overcompensate in some way just because I'm having a difficult time. It's also understanding that plants grow more or less depending on what season we're in. Not every season is a season for growth. Like a lot of my plants have not pushed out leaves in months because it's hibernation time and it is absolutely cold outside and we're not getting any sunlight. So why on earth would I make myself meet the same standard that I would if I was in the sun and like feeling all of this energy? So I could go on with all the metaphors, but basically I really try to check in with myself and validate the fact that not every season is a season for growth, and that is okay. It's actually normal.
Ooh. Woo!
A word.
I know.
Amen. Let the church say amen. My God. Absolutely.
I
Oh,
love that. I love that so much because it's
right?
true. It's so
It
true.
is true. We beat ourselves up. Why we live in a society that promotes and reinforces production all the time. How productive are we? How productive are we? But
Mm.
rest is productive. Mourning is productive. Feeling your feelings is productive. Just because it's not measurable on paper and there's no output physically, it doesn't mean that it is not equally as important.
Oh, I love that so much. We could learn something from the plants, right?
Oh yeah. I've also been saying too, I feel like this story has always been in my heart. I knew I wanted to tell a story that talked about loss and grief and highlighted that for Black and Brown youth. I don't think that I would have been able to tell this story had it not been for plants, because I finally found the metaphor that worked to talk about it. And it was the exact thing that we started off talking about in this podcast, Shannon, that you feel like you kill every plant. And I was like, I can't think of one community of people that is so comfortable talking about death and loss apart from the plant world. Like, we kill plants left and right, and it's like we almost brag about it. Like, girl, I
Hmm.
killed that. I'm off that. I'm not doing that
Yeah.
anymore. So,
Yeah.
what better way to talk about loss for like adults and kids than using the metaphor of plants?
I didn't even think about that. That's true though. There's like no shame in saying you killed a plant or like
None.
a plant died. It's
None.
like none,
Kill it,
None. My
but
Shannon.
mom
we
called me a
also they
serial
are
killer
living
once because of all the
things.
plants I killed.
Oh my
Not, I'm not bringing you
god.
anything else. I'm not
No.
sending them to their
Yeah,
deaths.
you're done.
Sending them to your house to die, meet their demise.
Yeah.
Did you know that today is National Houseplant Appreciation Day? And I thought that was such a
Is
big. I was like, oh
it?
my god, we have you
Is
on National.
it?
It
Wait, how
popped
did I
up on
Love
not know this in
LinkedIn.
that.
like 5 years?
Yeah, I
Wow.
literally
Oh,
looked it
that's
up.
cute.
Yeah. Yeah, Houseplant Appreciation Day is on January 10th every year, and it reminds us that we don't have to lose the freshness and vibrancy that plants bring to our homes just because the holidays have drawn to a close. Isn't that so
Aw.
fitting?
That is
I was
crazy
like,
because I was just telling my dad that every year, like clockwork, this is my busiest time of year. We get the most plant inquiries right now. And I think it's
oh,
because
really?
everyone is coming out of this like busy holiday season and they start to notice, oh shit, I neglected my plants. I was so focused on the Christmas
Oh,
tree. Or like,
no.
oh, we've been
Mm-hmm.
blasting the heater and the plant didn't make it. Everyone's noticing right now. So most people think we're busy during the spring and summer. It's always the winter because we just sort of go into like neglect mode.
Oh,
So it's ironic
Hmm.
that
interesting.
we're filming today. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know I saw that and I was like, whoa. I love it though.
That's
But
great.
But speaking of plants, a lot of the times when people are grieving, it's like customary to bring gifts like food or people bring whatever.
Mm.
Do you think that plants make good grief gifts? And if so, which plants would you recommend to someone who is like actively grieving that wouldn't be too much effort for them to keep alive?
I'm really glad you added that caveat because I always like to add that in. I think where anyone who's grieved the loss of someone or something before knows that it's quite possible that you'd feel like you want to neglect your responsibilities so that you can feel your feelings. Like that is quite a normal thing to feel. And the last thing you want to do is give someone more damn responsibility while they're going through something,
Mm-hmm.
no matter how
Yep.
like beautifully intentioned it is. But I think it's really important that if you are well intentioned and you are deciding to give a gift of a plant to someone who is experiencing loss, it's picking something that doesn't require too much responsibility. So, some of my favorites are the ZZ plant. Very low maintenance. It tends to only need water once every 2 to 3 weeks because it enjoys sitting in dry soil. So, that's a great
I'm
one.
gonna write these down.
Alternatively, yeah, the ZZ plant, they're actually all, they were intentionally chosen and in the book. So they're all in the back of the book. Those are I call
Oh,
them the
those are the
grieving
Oh, the
plants.
ones.
I
glossary.
chose those
Yes.
intentionally. Yes.
Ah.
Um, so the other one is the Monstera, Big Mon.
Mm-hmm.
Big Mon isn't necessarily a low maintenance plant. And put that in quotes mainly because it only needs water once a week. Like it's not too intense where it's a full-time job. However, I really like to recommend it because every time a new leaf comes out, it looks different than the last one. Like anyone who's had a Monstera knows that like the new
Yeah.
holes coming in, it's like, it's such a dramatic event. It's like a new baby being born. And I think it's the most rewarding and fun thing to experience, especially if you're having a hard time with life and mourning. So I call them the like, it's like the plant that gives back. Like, you know, you're doing a good job because a big ass leaf just popped out and it's like, yeah, I did that. That was like part of our relationship that we've grown together. So those would be the two that I would recommend, along with the other ones in the back of the book. But those are the two that I'll shout out.
Love those. I love my Monstera plant so much. Every time a new leaf, I'm like, yes, I did it right.
Yes. It's so good, right? It like tells you,
and they're
like,
always
yes,
different.
you did that.
Yeah, I love that.
I love what you said about how it's almost like a plant that gives back. It's a gift. Like, you've been gifted this new leaf, which, by the way, I guess, spoiler alert if y'all haven't read the book, but when that new leaf popped out, my Fifis, like, oh my gosh, I'm granted, life has been life and it's been a very long week. But I read that and I'm just like, I'm texting Alexis like, God damn it, now I'm in tears. Like, but it was just, I mean, right in the Fifis. And it was beautiful. And, you know, I like what you said about just really trying to open up that conversation for kids, because a lot of times kids are left out of important conversations of grief and loss, and very much that be seen and not heard mentality. And it was just such a beautiful way. This book was such a beautiful way to broach a much needed discussion, and with much needed representation, as we've talked about. How do you think we can do a better job of making sure that grieving children do feel seen and heard?
That's a beautiful question. It's so funny going into, I've never written a book before. I didn't set out with the intention of, I want to write a book and get a book deal. And so one thing that I realized through this process is the children's book world is different than any other book world, in that not only does the book need to work for children, but the children are not pulling out their Birkin bags and paying for the book. It's the parents that ultimately decide whether this book is worthy of being on their bookshelves. So I need to sell this book double time. And so once I realized that, I was like, okay, I have a challenge ahead when it comes to writing and also marketing the book. And the reason I bring that up is because I think that we as adults, whether you're a parent or not, if you have children within your community, the best thing that we can do to make sure that children are better equipped to deal with mourning and loss is to heal our own inner children first. And so I've always said that this book is being marketed as a children's book. You go to the children's section in Barnes & Noble or Target or wherever, and it's there. However, I think that a lot of books and a lot of activities that are marketed towards children are actually great for us as adults. What do we as adults consider to be play? Is it going to happy hour with our friends? Is it going to the movies? Is it going out to the club? Play can also be going back to those things that really made us feel affirmed and made us feel good as children. And whether it was reading books, circling back to those life lessons that we missed. And I think a great example of that is when we go back to watch our favorite Pixar and Disney movies. There's a reason those hit home and they still make us feel good. And it's because a piece of our inner child is speaking to us in those moments. And sometimes we even pick out lessons that we miss because they now apply to us at this point in our lives. So in short, to answer your question, I think the best way that we can make sure that children and any future generation that comes after us is better equipped is for us to do the work, because we have to set the example.
Oh, I love that so much. It's true.
Well, I know Alexis and I definitely felt that Disney line, man.
Yeah, when you said the Disney and Pixar thing, I immediately thought back to Shannon and like all those days we spent, weeks, we spent months, we spent watching Disney movies together over and over, just trying to get you through, because, and it did, it helped, but I love that point that you make, because it's true. We can't help, no?
Yeah, I think even as we grow too, like I'm going to butcher it, but I've read somewhere that like, so we obviously were born as babies and then we grow up, we're kids, adults, etc. And then we make it back to this state of dependency where we're in our older age. And it's like very similar to being a child again, where like you have to take all of these lessons that are brand new to you and make sense of them. And so I think a lot of becoming a mature adult is going back to the basics and the things that made us feel good when we were children. I think that's what it's about.
Absolutely.
For
Just
sure.
really quick, Alexis, what kind of tea did you use? Because I had fresh ginger, and I made like I didn't even use a tea bag. I'm very proud of myself. I like shaved some ginger and then like steeped it in hot water, and it's just this is so good.
It's giving,
I have
right?
elderberry.
It's so good.
Ooh,
yum. That's a good
that might be good.
choice.
Yeah,
What type of
all
tea do
these
you
things
use,
out here
Maryah?
running amok, I'm doing elderberry.
So
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if you were going to specifically ask which one. I'm a cinnamon apple girly with like a little
Ooh.
honey and some bourbon. Highly
Sounds
recommend.
good.
It's
I'll
really,
think of
That's
really
right.
that.
I
good.
know.
And like,
Yeah, I have a
oh, it's
little bourbon in here
amazing. It's
too.
like, yeah, just like a little slash. And I'm
Cinnamon
so glad we have a
apple.
time difference because it's 3 p.m. my time and I don't have to commit to anything after this. So I can just be my
You can
little
just
like
be
splash of
happy.
whiskey self. Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
It worked out though. I'm enjoying this. What is it? Noon for us tea with a little extra
We
happiness
decided
in
we
it.
were just going to be about that life for you today. We just decided
We're
that
like,
this is just the kind of
Absolutely.
day
I
we're going to
we're
have.
just
appreciate
And
living
you
it.
our
know
best
what?
life.
Yeah, and you know what? The way life has been lifing, it's been a very hectic couple of weeks for us. So it's very much like, you know what? I think we deserve this. I think we deserve to just like drink whiskey at noon on a Wednesday.
It's
So
a
we're
little
Yes.
going to do
And
treat.
that.
like I had my assistant emphasize a splash of whiskey, not a shot, not a half a shot, a
Just a
splash,
little.
just to like coat,
See?
just to coat the throat. That's it.
Shout out to her.
That's
She's the real MVP. She's been absolutely wonderful.
she has
Oh,
been. She's so sweet. I love her too.
I gotta shout out
Mhm.
Danica. Danica is my I think if this was like a Disney movie, there would be this like soldier or like probably better described as like the bouncer in the front of the club.
Yeah.
That's Danica for me. And she's the kindest bouncer out there. Just like,
Mhm.
hey, what's your name? What's your sign? Let's be besties. But as soon as things
Aw.
run amok in the Palace of Green Peace, she's like, no, that you're crossing Mariah's personal boundaries. And I just love her and I'm so grateful for her.
Shout out to her. Shout out to
She's
Danica.
great. Yeah. Shout out
Danica,
to
if you're
Dan. I know.
out
I was
there, I
just wishing to say her
appreciate
name.
you.
I'm like, shout out to Danica. You're a real one. I love
Yes.
that. Very much loving, but also not afraid of the on today's episode of what we're not about to do.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to talk about your book some more because I'm so obsessed. And one of I think the
Yeah.
main theme that's kind of running through the book is the good things take time, which is a huge lesson that even anyone, not just children, adults need to learn to accept because it's really true. So I wanted to know, was this something that you were taught as a child that you kind of wanted to emulate? And how do you personally relate this saying to grief?
Mm. Yeah, it wasn't necessarily something that I can remember being woven into my childhood explicitly. I do when I think back to my childhood, I remember being praised for being exceptional, for getting good grades, for making that lemonade stand, for doing all the like really good things, which is well intentioned. If you're a parent, absolutely you praise all those things. And so now as an adult, I find that I feel the most accepted and validated when I'm receiving praise from other people or sources. And that gets me in a ton of hot water because I have to work on my ability to validate my own accomplishments and just existence. Like just being is enough, not even accomplishing, just being. Um, so the concept of good things take time, this idea of deferred gratification, I it came up for me when I first experienced massive amounts of grief for the first time. And it was when I lost my grandmother. And I'm very grateful to say, I think with grandparents and people who are older, there's this sort of like timestamp or like, of course, the grief and the loss hurt so much, but we also know that they're getting older. And so it's sort of an expected loss, if you will. Um, and so that felt very different from obviously what Malcolm's going through because he lost his father, who's clearly very young. But for me, I wanted to find a way to highlight this in the book, even though it wasn't something that I found stuck out to me as a kid. But presently, as an adult, I wanted it to be very clear that deferred gratification along the way, like it may seem like everything is running amok and nothing's happening, especially during the grieving process. I can't remember how many stages there are to the grief process, but just understanding that it is not an overnight process. And every single piece of it is intentional to get you to where you need to be. And the same exists with plants. I mean, you pot a plant and then you don't see a leaf for 2 months and you're like, you don't assume it's dying. Like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But like, it's not dead just because it's not pushing out a new leaf. Just because you have a brown spot doesn't mean the plant's infected. Or we tend to want to label things and come to all these really big conclusions. And it's like, we've got to make a decision of how we want to understand. Wait, what?
Sorry. What is wrong with you?
You said it doesn't mean that it's dying. And
Wait,
I'm like, wait, it doesn't.
She's like, did I kill a
plant?
I'm so sorry to interrupt.
I was immediately, let me stop you there.
I was immediately horrified by like how many plants I might have accidentally like buried alive. Oh
no, I mean, I will say this.
Oh my God.
You'll know when it's dead. Like, if it's giving tumbleweed, it's dead. But if there's a couple brown spots, or she's leaning a little to the left, or like she hasn't pushed out a new leaf, like I would just assume that your plant is going through something and it might need a little love, but it doesn't mean run to the watering can. It doesn't mean throw it away. It doesn't mean like overhaul the whole thing. But I also, now I'm curious. I want to see what your plants looked like, because I hope you didn't get rid of any just like babies in need of love.
I will. You know what? I'll do that before we end the call. I will bring over Shirley and Camille so you can see them. And I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes,
you were in the middle of such a beautiful monologue.
No, it's real though. It's so real.
She was feeling guilt in the back of her mind. She's like, oh my God, I got rid of these plants that probably weren't even dead, but I could have taken
trust
care
your judgment. Trust your judgment.
Oh my God.
Plans. I do want to ask our favorite question that this season we've been asking every guest. And that is, how do you want to be remembered?
Ooh. Oh my God, I went and had whiskey if I knew you guys were going to ask that. Oh God. Well, I want to be remembered as, there's a very simple rule that I remember as a kid, like growing up. And it's so simple. I feel like a lot of people have heard it. And my mom has always just been like, leave a place better than you found it, which is such a general answer. But I try to leave every place better than I found it, whether it's like picking up my trash and just like simple stuff like that. But also in the grand scheme of things, like zooming out, any classroom I've ever been in to teach, or any podcast I've ever done, or any room I've ever had the privilege of being in, an opportunity, I try to leave that space better than I found it, for the people that are in that space and also for myself. Like, what is it that I've learned or picked up from that? And I feel like the best way to do that is through listening. I try really, really hard to be an intentional listener, and to have that like reframe and alter my point of view and like question what I know to be true, because I feel like the moment we're so certain about everything we know to be true is when we stop learning. So I think the easy answer is to leave the world better than I found it.
Oh, I love that.
Beautiful.
That's amazing.
Thank you. There's so many little, again, I feel like I'm hammering home the like teacher thing, but there's so many little rules in the classroom that, like the sayings we have of clean it up better than you left it, or like stick with your partner, or like check in with your team, that still apply in life. And I think we just like grow up and we forget these basic golden rules, but they all apply.
Yep. And like being kind and all of that kind of stuff, like rings through to all of your life, not just when you're a child.
Totally. And like accountability, like we don't label it as accountability when you're a kid, but it's like, well, he hit me first, and like, no, she hit me back. And how many times throughout the day can we think of a time where we've gotten caught up in something and we're reacting to what someone did to us or what someone said. Like it
Yeah.
all goes back to like having accountability and deciding, is this worth reacting to? Which is easier said than done sometimes. Like I live in New York and I'm just like, I walk around like, please give me a reason today. Let's do it. Let's go. But it's
I'm ready.
so draining. It's not healthy for anybody.
Yeah.
Listen, New York will do that to you. I have a cousin that's in New York as well, and I'm actually overdue to go see her, but same thing. She's like, just walking, sometimes just getting to work and getting on the subway, getting where you need to go is such an ordeal that it's like, I don't know if you picked the right one or the wrong one, but you're going to find out today.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And you have to sort of create the atmosphere you want to live in. I'm AirPods in, I've got my classical music going or whatever it is I want to listen to that day. And it's assuming that something is going to throw you off your track. Every time I leave the house, I'm like, something is going to go wrong. I have never in New York gone from A to B with, sorry, that's my dishwasher. See, something, I could be recording a podcast and the dishwasher is talking shit. And it's like, there's always something else that could be going on that's going to throw you off. But it is what it is. I think New York, if you allow it to, it can either really harden your soul or it can make you laugh at a lot of things. And I have to make the active choice every day to laugh.
Yep.
Well,
I think that
before
we have that same thing much.
Before we wrap this up, we want to play just a little game with you if you're up for it.
I love games. Yes.
So we have this deck. It's called the Death Deck. And it's not an ad for them. It's just a tool that I really like. It was created by a hospice nurse and social worker. And it's to help people have these end of life conversations. So we're going to ask you a few questions.
Wow. Oh, that's beautiful. Let's get into it.
We'll see how beautiful it is when we get into some of these questions.
Oh, Lord. Okay.
You're going to be like, oh, God.
So we'll start off with an easy one. So multiple choice. Growing up, my family dealt with death by A, talking openly, sharing feelings, stories, and maybe a little dark humor. B, in a no nonsense sort of way. Shit happens and you move on. Or C, keeping it all bottled up and avoiding any discussion.
Very much A. I'm very blessed to be able to say A to that. I had a great grandmother who lived to be 99, and she had 9 siblings, and she was the last to live. So we dealt with loss of people underneath her for years, And I feel like talking about loss was something that it wasn't necessarily feelings that we talked about, but the idea of, oh, someone passed away. This was what they want at their funeral. And it's normal that this happened. That was my experience with loss as a kid.
All right. Next question. The Shrine Shine. Name and explain one personal item that rightfully belongs in your postmortem shrine.
Oof. Hmm. Oh, that's so hard. One item in my shrine?
It's one.
The first thing that comes to mind is my necklace. It's from my grandmother, and she left it to me when she passed away. And the dedication in the book, it says to Grandma Sandy. That's her. This was her necklace, and she left it. I remember whenever I'd stay at my grandmother, she'd be like, my grandmother was this really cute Ukrainian lady who said whatever came to her mind. And when I say whatever, I mean whatever. And she would just say things like, when I die, this is yours. Don't lose it. Keep it clean when I die. And I was just like, what do you mean when you die? Like, you sound so crazy to me right now. And then one day it became mine. Which has this direct tie to the book, like the same line of one day the plants became Malcolm's. That was my same experience with, oh shit, this is real now. And so I think it would be this necklace because it was a moment that I first felt lost. Not the phone call of your grandmother passed away, not the like going to the hospital. It was the moment of this tangible thing has become yours after talking about it for so long.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Really
Thank you.
is. My goodness. All right.
That's the last one, I
It's
promise. It's
awesome.
3 times. It's so
It's
trying.
obnoxious.
I don't know if you could hear
It's a dishwasher.
I don't know if you could hear, but at 12:15 Pacific, my auto cat feeder goes off, and it's just me going, Cersei, Jubal, it's time to eat. And so I'm like trying to ignore, and then their food comes
I didn't
down.
catch that. Mine comes on at 6 a.m. and 4 p.m. So it's going to come out in 45 minutes. Same thing. Mine is like, come eat, little one. And that's it.
And they scamper out and they eat, and then they disappear to wherever they go during the day. But they scamper out. They were here for about
Yeah.
4 minutes. I'm surprised we haven't. My younger cat Jubal likes to hop up and she guest stars sometimes because she
She
hears
likes to let her
Alexis's voice
presence
and
be
she goes
known.
running. Mm-hmm.
She loves me.
Oh, she must be a Leo. I love that.
She's so
You know what?
cute.
I think she is. Yeah, I think she is because we got her in late July. I think
Period.
she is a
Yep. She's
Leo.
my kind of girl. She gets it.
Mm-hmm.
She
Are you a
fits it.
Leo?
I am very much Leo. Have you seen that meme that says, you know, someone's a Leo when they ask everyone else their sign just so they can say they're a Leo? And I feel like I'm doing that right now. I was trying to avoid asking everybody's sign.
Oh, you can
Yes,
ask.
Jubal sign. It's
We actually
fine.
have an episode. Yeah,
Yeah, we don't
the
mind.
episode that just came out on Monday. Actually, we sat down with Joelle Simone Maldonado. She goes by the Grave Woman. She's a funeral director based in the South, and she had a whole series of grief and astrological signs. So how like Pisces tend, how to notice grief in Pisces, how to notice grief in Cancer, how to notice grief in Leo, Capricorn, and so yeah, it was really cool to talk to her about it.
Wow. Oh, I need to
But
listen to that.
Amazing.
That's amazing.
I am a
It's really
Cancer.
fun.
I'm very much a Cancer. And Alexis, you want to?
Yes, she is. I'm a Capricorn. I just had a birthday, actually.
You
Happy
did.
But we're opposite
belated.
signs. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, cancers. Cancers. I feel like, are you done? Do you need a tissue?
Are you the emotions? The
The
emotions.
emotions. But I think it's so beautiful that you feel them.
Mhm.
I'm a like save it for the locker room girly, and it's not healthy.
Yep.
You know what's
Same.
funny though is and maybe a lot of that is nurture versus nature because I grew up in South Central Los Angeles. So I'm not a very openly emotional person by nature. But once you get in
Mm.
there, like once we're like friends, then it's just like, oh yeah, I'm a big ball of like squishy feelings where I texted her
Alexis,
and
you're like, yeah.
where I'm crying over a
Yes.
fictional plant leaf. So
I'm like, are you okay? Do we need to call someone?
I'm dead.
but we have this
Gotta love it
saying
though.
that whenever we're, frustrated or tired and we're trying to like just kind of tough it out, we just when we used to work in the same funeral home, we'd be like NWB. And what does that stand for, Alexis?
No weak bitches.
Wow, period. Mine that I say
Sometimes
to
you just
myself is
gotta.
fuck bitches get money, but I don't think that's helpful for anybody ever
I-
at any point in
Hey,
time.
sometimes it is. Sometimes it be like
Sometimes it
that
is.
though.
It
Fact.
really is. Yeah, but it'll be like in the craziest thing. Like I'm going to go do a reading at some school with these kids and someone gets in my way and I'm like, fuck bitches get money. I got to go talk to these kids. It's very like
Hey,
Issa Rae.
Which like
I love
randomly we
that.
went to high school together.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
Shut up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen her in years, but like
Wow.
from afar, I'm always just like,
That's crazy. That's so
Mm-hmm.
yep. You're
cool.
right.
That's a cool fun
We went to
fact.
King George. Random fun fact. So, okay, I think I'm gonna do. Let's see. I'm gonna like randomly let you pick one more. So, why don't you just tell me when to stop?
Stop.
Ooh, okay. Which of these phrases do you feel is the worst to say to someone after the death of a loved one? I'm let you know right now they're all terrible. Spoiler alert, they're all
Okay,
terrible. Which
okay.
one is the worst? A. I know just how you feel. B, they're in a better place now. Or C, everything happens for a reason.
Oh God. I can't answer that. I can't answer that question. I
Which is
can't.
the
I don't have, I don't
worst.
The
know. I don't
worst.
have anyone in my life that has that language in their book. The worst one, I gotta go with everything happens for a reason. That's kind of crazy. Like it's on site if somebody says that to me.
Oh,
And
tell
I'm
them,
not a
Shannon. Tell her.
fighter.
Tell her
Ooh.
your story, Shannon.
Oh, I
Oh
have a so
God.
I so in 2017 I lost my fiance suddenly 3 weeks before our wedding.
I'm
And yeah, I
so
know
sorry.
it sucked. And it was, Alexis actually dropped everything. She moved in with me for the better part of like a month. And that's all we did. So I could sleep was like binge watch Disney movies. We watched Moana so much because that was the last movie
Yep.
I'd watched with him. And that's also, by the way, 2017 is also the year that Coco came out. So I to this day cannot watch Coco. That was
Wow.
when Coco came
Ugh.
out. And I went to go see it. Like I was getting an oil change and I went to go, it was gonna take forever. So I went to the movies to like kill time. And I was like, I'll just go see Coco. No one warned me.
Oh
Mistake.
Lord. No.
Mistake.
Oh, Shannon.
But I grew up in the church. I grew up Seventh Day Adventist, and I would go back
Mm.
and forth off and on. So I went back to church, and this older lady who is dead now, so I guess jokes on her, but she stopped
Period.
me. and, and I know she meant well. I know she meant well, and she was very much like, well, everything happens for a reason. And so I Cardi beat her. I was like, so what was the reason?
What
And I
was
just
the
stood there.
reason?
I just waited for her. And it was funny because we talk about this in another episode, but I remember just being so like, okay, so explain it to me. Because I've learned, and this kind of has always been something that I've recently come to accept about myself, is that making people uncomfortable in return for disrespectful comments is like my pastime. So same if someone says something that's like a little bit racist or a little bit sexist, I love to pretend like I don't understand and just like, no, I'm a cool girl. No, explain it to me. I want to laugh. And just
I
watch
live
them
for
get
that.
progressively more uncomfortable. It's so
Yes.
fun. It is so fun.
And like
And so,
open-ended statements, like what an interesting thing to say to me. Or oh, what makes you say
mhm,
that? Like I'm on board with you 100%.
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, yeah, that was the only time I've ever been hit with the everything happens for a reason. It's just like, girl, what? You're just saying
What were the
things.
other two? It was like everything happens for a reason. They're in a better place.
I
They're in a better
know.
place is like whatever you believe in, fine, whatever, sure. And what was the other
Mm-hmm.
one?
I know just how you feel.
Mm.
God forbid this moment isn't about you for 1 second. But I can
Yeah.
also, yeah, I think the last one is horrible. Oh gosh.
Well,
That is horrible. I'm so sorry that someone said that to you. I'm even more sorry for your loss. And
thank you.
none of those three things apply. So,
Well, I would love to wrap this up by asking, is there anything that you'd like to share? I know this is probably going to come out way later, but where can the people find you if they want to connect with you, if they want to follow you and see what you're up to?
yeah, they can find me on social media. I'm on Instagram. The at name is Greenpeace. I'm on TikTok. I'm on the World Wide Web. I'm everywhere. You'll find me if you just type me into your socials. Is there anything else I want to share? I think we have this idea of like what loss and mourning applies to, and we tend to think of people. I've become a lot more familiar over the past few months about mourning, um, the idea of things, mourning processes, or mourning time periods in your life,
Mm,
and how you think something is supposed to go and it doesn't end up happening. That's fairly
Mm.
new to me. And so I want to open listeners up to this idea of mourning can apply to more than just a person or a relationship you have. It can also be to experiences. So yeah, that's the journey that I'm on right now, discovering what mourning looks like in multiple facets.
Well, y'all all know that you can find me on just about everything at I Do Death. Keep up with me at idodeath.com, as well as on TikTok as I.do.death. I'm going to be bitter forever that someone was a hater and took it first.
Someone took it.
Me too, girl.
But you can find us there. And of course, you can keep up with the show on Instagram at Get Stiff Podcast.
And you can find me on everything at Death with Lex.
As always, Maryah, thank you so much for joining us. This was so much fun. You are just such a light. You are such a light.
Thank you.
It was truly a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful that you guys have shared your platform with me to share about this book and just like opening up with you all. So I really appreciate it. And thank you for drinking a little liquor during the afternoon.
Anytime.
Oh, trust me. Thank you for giving us a reason to have a little liquor in the afternoon.
We'll circle back. We'll do it again.
Well, as always, this has been another episode of Get Stiff, Stiff Talk.
Stiff drinks.
And we out. Bye, y'all. Get Stiff is produced by Milan Reed. Do you love us and want to help others find the show? If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. For all audio platforms, please rate and review the show. It helps others find us, and we'd love to know what you think. Do you have a topic you want to hear us get into? A drink recipe you'd like to recommend? Do you have a story to share? We want to hear from you. Get in touch at getstiffpodcast@gmail.com or reach out on Instagram at getstiffpodcast.